Can you believe she's still playing victim after what she did to you? The photographer's assistant whispered those words while adjusting my scarf, the silk one hiding purple bruises around my throat. 3 months after Sarah threw me down 14 concrete steps, I stood at the back of my brother David's wedding reception, watching the woman who tried to kill me float across the dance floor in a $30,000 Vera Wang dress. The same manicured hands that had gripped my shoulders before the push now delicately held champagne. The same voice that had hissed, "You pathetic little mouse," before I tumbled backwards, now rang out in practiced laughter. The same eyes that had watched me fall without flinching now sparkled with tears of joy as she gazed at my brother. I touched the raised scar beneath my makeup, a 3-inch reminder that ran from my left temple to my cheekbone. The security footage from that night had mysteriously corrupted. The witnesses had been mistaken. Even the emergency room doctor who'd stitched me up had suddenly forgotten key details after a visit from Sarah's lawyer father. My phone still held my brother's text from that night, sent while I was still bleeding in the hospital. "Stay away from us. Sarah told me everything. You attacked her first, and she was just defending herself. I can't believe my own sister would try to ruin my happiness. Don't contact me again." 16 stitches, 3 broken ribs, a concussion that stole 2 weeks of my memory, and a brother who chose to believe his fiancée's tears over his sister's blood. The wedding photographer moved through the crowd, capturing joy I couldn't feel. "Beautiful ceremony," he said, passing by me. Though someone should tell the maid of honor she's been recording with her phone this whole time, probably trying to make one of those wedding TikToks. I glanced at Rebecca, Sarah's maid of honor, and my former college roommate, the woman who'd called me crying a week ago, saying she had something important to show me. The woman who'd discovered what really happened to our grandmother's $50,000 education trust. The woman whose phone had been recording for the past hour, including Sarah's whispered confession in the bathroom about how she'd handled the sister problem. "Ladies and gentlemen," the DJ's voice boomed, "please join me in congratulating Mr. and Mrs. David Chen on their beautiful union." The crowd erupted in applause. Sarah's eyes found mine across the room as she raised her glass in a mock toast. She winked, the same wink she'd given me right before the push. What she didn't know was that I'd spent the last 3 months doing more than just healing. The small recording device in my purse wasn't the only surprise I'd brought to her perfect day. While she'd been planning flowers and picking out china patterns, I'd been building something she could never have imagined. The biotech company I'd quietly founded, the shares I'd been accumulating in her father's pharmaceutical empire. The evidence Rebecca had been gathering. My hand instinctively went to my throat, feeling for the bruises that had long since faded but never truly healed. In 2 hours during the reception slideshow, everyone in this room would learn the truth. Not through accusations or angry confrontations. I'd learned that direct attacks only made me look like the bitter, jealous sister Sarah painted me as. No, the truth would unveil itself elegantly, irrefutably, through security footage that hadn't been destroyed after all, through financial records showing where Grandma's money really went, through Sarah's own words, captured when she thought no one was listening. "Sweetheart, you came?" My mother's voice startled me. She air-kissed my cheek, careful not to smudge her makeup. Though I do wish you'd worn something more festive. Black at a wedding? Really, dear? Black seemed appropriate for a funeral. The death of the family I thought I had. Sarah looks absolutely radiant, doesn't she? Mom continued, not waiting for my response. And to think she's been so gracious about that whole misunderstanding. She told me she's willing to put it all behind her once you apologize. Apologize? For being pushed down the stairs, for having my trust fund stolen, for being erased from my own family. I'll think about it, I said quietly, my fingers tracing the edge of the business card in my pocket. Dr. Catherine Ross, CEO of MedRestore Technologies. The name I'd built while they built their lies. The string quartet began playing, and couples moved toward the dance floor. David spun Sarah in a perfect circle, her dress billowing like a cloud. For a moment, I saw us as children, my big brother pushing me on the swing set, promising he'd always protect me, the same brother who'd held my hand at our father's funeral, the same brother who'd signed a restraining order against me based on Sarah's fabricated police report. "Oh," Mom said, following my gaze. "The videographer wants all immediate family for some footage, but Sarah specifically requested, well, you understand, we don't want to make things awkward." Of course, erased from the photos, just like I'd been erased from everything else. The forgotten sister, the inconvenient truth, the problem that Sarah had tried to solve with a push and a lie. Actually, Rebecca appeared at my elbow, her phone discreetly tucked away. "Sarah wants her in the video," she insisted, said it would mean so much to have the whole family together. My mother looked confused but pleased. "Oh, how wonderful! See, dear, I told you Sarah has such a forgiving heart." Forgiving? I almost laughed. Sarah didn't want me in the video out of forgiveness. She wanted me there as a trophy, the mouse in the trap, the sister who'd been put in her place. As we walked toward the videographer's setup, Rebecca squeezed my arm. Her eyes met mine with a mixture of guilt and determination. She'd been Sarah's friend since high school, but even she had limits. Even she couldn't stomach what she'd discovered. 5 minutes, she whispered. The slideshow starts in 5 minutes. 5 minutes until the countdown ended. 5 minutes until every guest in this room saw the real Sarah Whitman Chen. 5 minutes until my brother faced the truth he'd been so desperate to avoid. The videographer positioned us carefully. The happy couple in the center, parents on either side, and me, relegated to the far edge, barely in frame. Sarah's hand found David's, her engagement ring catching the light. The same ring purchased 2 days after Grandma's trust fund was emptied. "Everyone smile," the videographer called out. "This is for posterity." Posterity? Yes, this moment would certainly be remembered. Just not the way Sarah planned. As the camera rolled, I smiled. Not the broken smile of a victim or the bitter smile of revenge, but the quiet smile of someone who'd learned the most elegant revenge isn't served cold. It's served with perfect timing at a wedding reception, wrapped in truth and tied with a bow of consequences. "Beautiful," the videographer lowered his camera. "Now let's get everyone back to the reception. I believe there's a special presentation starting soon." Sarah's hand tightened on David's arm. For the first time all day, I saw a flicker of uncertainty cross her face. Did she know? Could she sense the careful architecture of her lies beginning to crack? "Oh yes," I said softly, adjusting my scarf one final time. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Betrayal doesn't always arrive with a scream. Sometimes it comes with a smile and a wedding veil. But truth? Truth arrives exactly when it's meant to. Dressed in black at a white wedding, carrying 3 months of patience in her pocket and justice in her heart. I learned to disappear before I learned to shine. It's a peculiar talent, becoming invisible in your own family. One I'd mastered by age 7, when my parents forgot to pick me up from ballet practice. 3 hours I waited, watching other girls leave with mothers who remembered. When Dad finally arrived, he was irritated. "Why didn't you call David? He could have reminded us." Even then, my existence required my brother's validation to matter. The pattern crystallized over years of family dinners, where my straight A's were acknowledged with nods, while David's B+ in chemistry warranted a celebration dinner. "MIT is so competitive," Mom would gush, while my early acceptance to Johns Hopkins School of Medicine sat unmentioned in my backpack. I stopped bringing home achievements the day I won the state science fair and found my trophy relocated to David's room because it matched his decor better. Perhaps that's why I chose emergency medicine. The irony of saving lives while being lifeless in my own family's eyes wasn't lost on me. I sutured wounds at 2 a.m., restarted hearts that had given up, held hands of the dying who had no one else. The forgotten daughter became the doctor who made sure no one else was forgotten. My colleagues called me gifted. My family called me David's sister. The night I graduated summa cum laude from medical school, my parents were at David's company softball game. "He's up for a promotion," Mom explained over a hasty phone call. "You understand, sweetheart, we'll celebrate later." Later never came. I stood on that stage, hood being placed over my head by the dean, and spotted one familiar face in the crowd. My grandmother, tears streaming down her cheeks. She died 2 months later, but not before changing her will to ensure I'd have the funds to open my own practice someday. The $50,000 that Sarah would eventually steal. My apartment became a museum of solitary celebrations. Champagne bottles opened alone, birthday cakes with single candles, job offer letters pinned to a board no one would see. I furnished my life with achievements that echoed in empty rooms, each success a whisper in a world that had decided I was background noise. Then Sarah arrived. I remember that first family dinner like a film in slow motion. October 15th, 3 years ago. David brought her home wearing confidence like designer armor, Hermes bag, Cartier watch, smile that never quite reached her eyes. While my parents fawned over her pedigree, father owned Whitman Pharmaceuticals, mother was a federal judge, I watched her catalog our family dynamics with surgical precision. Her gaze lingered on the photo wall, 17 pictures of David, 2 of me, both partially obscured. She noticed Mom automatically serving David first, giving him the bigger portion. She saw how Dad directed every question to his son, while I silently refilled water glasses. By dessert, she'd completed her assessment. "Oh, you're the other one," she said when David finally remembered to introduce us. The word sliced cleaner than any scalpel I'd ever held. Not the sister, not the doctor. The other one. The afterthought, the footnote. My brother laughed. My parents laughed. I smiled and extended my hand, which she shook with the bare minimum of contact, already dismissing me before our skin had separated. "David tells me you work in a hospital?" She made it sound like I cleaned bedpans. How noble. I could never deal with all that blood and sadness. I prefer creating beauty in the world. She gestured to her Instagram-perfect appearance, as if her existence was an artistic contribution to humanity. "I save lives," I said quietly. "Well, someone has to, I suppose." She turned back to David, effectively erasing me from the conversation. "Darling, tell your parents about the Aspen trip." That night, I drove home understanding that my invisibility had found its perfect architect. Sarah didn't just see my family's blind spot. She planned to expand it until I disappeared entirely. The systematic deletion began immediately. Family group chats suddenly migrated to new threads that accidentally excluded my number. Holiday planning emails began arriving after venues were booked. "Oh, we assumed you'd be working," became Sarah's favorite refrain, always delivered with practiced concern. "Doctors have such demanding schedules. We didn't want to burden you." She weaponized my dedication against me. Every surgery that ran late became evidence of my choosing career over family. Every medical conference was proof I didn't prioritize relationships. She painted my competence as coldness, my independence as indifference, and my family, already inclined to overlook me, found her narrative comfortable. It absolved them of guilt. I wasn't forgotten. I was absent by choice. The gaslighting was masterful. She'd mention events I was never told about, then act surprised by my absence. "Didn't David tell you about the Mother's Day brunch? Oh, men are so forgetful." She'd accidentally book family gatherings during my on-call shifts. Information she'd gleaned from the hospital schedule I'd shared during friendlier times. "Such a shame you'll miss Grandma Chen's birthday dinner. But we understand. Lives before lives, right?" I started keeping screenshots, saving voicemails, documenting the escalating erasure. Not out of paranoia, but from the clinical instinct to track symptoms of a disease. The pathology was clear. Sarah was metastasizing through my family, and I was the tissue being consumed. The crescendo came at David's birthday party last year. I'd taken a rare night off, bought an expensive watch he'd mentioned wanting. I arrived to find my place at the family table, occupied by Sarah's cousin. "Oh, we didn't think you were coming," Sarah exclaimed, loud enough for everyone to hear. "David said you had a surgery. Let me see if we can squeeze in an extra chair somewhere." Somewhere turned out to be the children's table. I sat between my 8-year-old nephew and 10-year-old niece, cutting their chicken, while my brother opened gifts at the main table. When he unwrapped an identical watch from Sarah, she caught my eye and smirked. She'd gone through my apartment during a friendly visit the week before. I understood then that my invisibility wasn't enough for her. She wanted to occupy even the spaces where I tried to exist. But here's what Sarah missed in her careful study of our family. Invisible people see everything. While she performed, I observed. While she calculated my elimination, I documented her calculations. Every cruel word, every financial discrepancy, every lie she told. I collected them like medical samples, storing them away for the diagnosis no one wanted to hear. That night at the children's table, my young niece looked up at me with innocent confusion. "Aunt Catherine, why don't you sit with the grown-ups?" "Because," I told her, smoothing her hair, "sometimes being forgotten teaches you to remember everything." I didn't know then that Sarah's final push, literal and metaphorical, was only months away. I didn't know that my brother would choose her lies over my blood. I didn't know that rock bottom had a basement, and that basement had stairs for her to throw me down. But I knew this. I had spent 28 years being erased by the people who should have seen me most clearly. I'd built a life in the shadows they cast, saved lives in the darkness they created. And when Sarah tried to delete me permanently, she forgot one crucial detail about shadows. They exist because somewhere light is shining. I learned to be silent, not because I was weak, but because I was taking notes. And my notes, like my memory, were extensive, dated, and waiting for their moment to be read aloud. The call came at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I just finished a 16-hour shift in the ER, 2 cardiac arrests, 1 multi-vehicle trauma, and a 7-year-old who'd reminded me why I chose this profession. My scrub still carried the echoes of lives saved, and I was looking forward to nothing more than collapsing into bed when my phone lit up with an unknown number. Dr. Chen, this is Marcus Fitzgerald from Fitzgerald and Associates. I'm handling your grandmother's estate. I apologize for the late hour, but there's been some unusual activity with the Education Trust. Could we meet tomorrow? My grandmother's trust. The $50,000 she'd specifically earmarked for me to open my own practice. A dream I'd shared with her during our last conversation. I'd been so consumed with grief after her passing that I'd trusted David to handle the estate details. He's good with finances, Mom had insisted, and Sarah's father has excellent lawyers. The meeting the next morning shattered more than my trust. It revealed a constellation of betrayal I'd been too blind to see. The money hadn't just vanished. It had been systematically transferred through a series of transactions, each one bearing David's signature and authorized by Sarah's father's law firm. The final destination? A down payment on Sarah and David's new condo. The transfers were flagged because they happened so quickly after your grandmother's passing, Marcus explained, sliding documents across his desk. And because the trust explicitly named you as the sole beneficiary, your brother had no legal authority to access these funds. $50,000. Not just money, my grandmother's final gift, her belief in my future, her way of ensuring I'd never be forgotten again. Stolen by the golden child and his parasitic fiancée. I drove straight to David's apartment, my hands steady despite the rage building in my chest. The clinical part of my brain noted my symptoms. Elevated heart rate, dilated pupils, adrenaline flooding my system. Fight or flight, and for once in my life, I chose fight. Sarah answered the door wearing yoga clothes that cost more than most people's rent, her face cycling through surprise, annoyance, and finally cold calculation. "Catherine, David's not here." She didn't move aside, blocking the doorway with her petite frame. "I know about the trust fund," I said simply. "I want to hear it from him." Something shifted in her expression. A predator recognizing its camouflage had failed. "I don't know what you think you know. I have the bank records, Sarah. Every transfer, every authorization, every lie." She stepped back, and I foolishly thought she was letting me in. Instead, she was texting rapidly on her phone. "You always were too smart for your own good," she murmured. "Following paper trails like a good little detective. Did it make you feel important? Relevant? That money was mine, my grandmother's gift to me." Sarah's laugh was crystalline, sharp enough to draw blood. "Yours, please. Do you know what David told me about that money? He said your grandmother felt sorry for you. The family disappointment needed a pity fund." She examined her manicure, each nail a perfect weapon. "We simply redirected it towards something that actually matters. Our future. That's not true. She believed in me. Believed in you? Sarah's voice dripped poison, disguised as pity. Is that what you tell yourself? That anyone in this family actually sees you as more than an obligation? Your wallpaper, Catherine. Background noise. The spare child they had to make David look better by comparison. Each word found its target with surgical precision. Every insecurity I'd buried, every fear I'd swallowed, every moment of invisibility, she wielded them all like weapons. This was what she'd been studying for 3 years. Not just how to erase me, but how to make me complicit in my own disappearance. I'm calling David, I said, reaching for my phone. Go ahead. Ask him to choose between his successful, beautiful fiancée and his bitter, delusional sister. See how that works out for you. My hands trembled as I dialed. Sarah watched with the satisfaction of a chess player who'd already calculated checkmate. The phone rang once, twice. What did you do? David's voice exploded through the speaker. Not a hello, not are you okay? Just accusation. David, the trust fund. Sarah's crying. She says you showed up here threatening her, making insane accusations about money. What is wrong with you? I looked at Sarah. She'd produced tears with the efficiency of a method actor, her face a masterpiece of manufactured distress. I never threatened anyone. I just asked about Grandma's money. Money that was used for family, for our future. God, Catherine, when did you become so selfish? It was my money, David. Grandma left it to me. To do what? Throw it away on another degree, another certification, more letters after your name that no one cares about? His words hit harder than any physical blow. Sarah's right. You're so desperate to matter that you're inventing conspiracies. It's pathetic. The line went dead. Sarah's tears evaporated instantly, replaced by a smile that belonged in a nature documentary about apex predators. You should go, she said softly. This is getting embarrassing even for you. I turned to leave, defeated, when her hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. Actually, wait, I want to show you something. She pulled me toward the stairwell of their luxury building. Marble steps that curved elegantly down 7 floors. Her grip was surprisingly strong for someone who claimed Pilates was her only exercise. Do you know what your problem is? She positioned herself between me and the door, her back to the stairs. You think because you save lives, your life matters. But saving strangers doesn't make your own family love you. It just makes you useful. A function, not a person. Let go of me, Sarah. You're like those trauma patients you work on, bleeding out but too stupid to realize they're already dead. Her nails dug into my wrist. The family chose me, Catherine. They chose the life I offer David over whatever sad existence you represent. Accept it and disappear quietly, or what? She leaned close, her breath mint fresh against my ear. Or I'll make you disappear myself. I should have seen it coming, should have recognized the way she shifted her weight, the calculation in her eyes. But I was trained to save lives, not defend my own. Her hands moved to my shoulders, and for a split second I saw my brother in her face, the same dismissal, the same certainty that I didn't matter enough to fight back. Then she pushed, 14 marble steps. I counted them on the way down, my medical training cataloging each impact. 3rd step, shoulder. 5th, ribs. 7th, head against the railing. The rest blurred into a symphony of breaking. Not just bones, but the last threads connecting me to the family I'd spent 28 years trying to belong to. I lay at the bottom, tasting copper and comprehending with perfect clarity that this was attempted murder disguised as an accident. Through the fog of pain, I heard her footsteps descending casually, unhurriedly. She crouched beside me, checking my pulse with those manicured fingers. Still breathing, she murmured, sounding disappointed. "You really are harder to get rid of than I thought." She stood, smoothing her yoga pants. Security cameras were conveniently under maintenance today, and who's going to believe that sweet, petite Sarah could overpower a woman who works trauma? You fell, Catherine, clumsy and desperate, just like everything else about you. She stepped over me like I was debris and walked away, already dialing on her phone. "David, your sister showed up hysterical about money and fell down the stairs. I tried to catch her, but I know, baby, I'm so shaken up." I lay there for 17 minutes before someone found me. 17 minutes to feel my ribs grinding, my vision swimming, my blood pooling on Italian marble. 17 minutes to receive David's texts. "Sarah told me what happened. Stop being dramatic. She's crying because of your accusations? If you pursue this, you're not my sister anymore. Stay away from my fiancé. Stay away from us." The paramedics who loaded me onto the stretcher were colleagues. I saw the recognition in their eyes, the unasked questions. "Fell down the stairs," I whispered through broken lips. They exchanged glances but said nothing. We all knew what "fell down the stairs" usually meant. 3 broken ribs, concussion, lacerations requiring 16 stitches, a bruised trachea from where she'd gripped my throat on the way down. The ER attending who treated me was a friend. "Catherine," she said quietly, "what really happened?" But I was already calculating. Sarah had won this round by playing dirty while I'd stayed clean. She'd used my family's blindness as a weapon, my isolation as an opportunity. She'd counted on my silence, my dignity, my refusal to make a scene. She was right about one thing. I was bleeding out, but she was wrong about being already dead. That night, drugged on morphine and clarity, I made a decision that would fundamentally rewire who I was. I wouldn't fight Sarah on her terms. I wouldn't beg my family to see what they'd chosen blindness against. I wouldn't waste energy on anger or revenge fantasies. Instead, I would disappear just like she wanted. But I would disappear upward. I would build something so undeniable that when I finally reappeared, my success would tell the truth my words never could. Every scar would become a blueprint. Every bruise, a business plan. "Dr. Chen?" The night nurse checking my vitals looked concerned. "You're crying." I touched my face, surprised by the wetness. "No," I said, feeling something cold and beautiful crystallize in my chest. "I'm done crying." I don't need apologies anymore. I need results, and results, unlike family, never lie about what you're worth. Recovery has its own architecture. First, you rebuild the body, bones knitting, skin sealing, bruises fading from purple to green to memory. Then comes the harder part, reconstructing a self that refuses to be broken by those who tried to break you. I spent 6 weeks in medical leave, officially recovering from my accident. Unofficially, I was gestating a new existence. The settlement from the building's insurance, $180,000 for their maintenance negligence on the stairwell cameras, became my seed money. Sarah's father's law firm handled the building's liability. The irony of them funding my rebirth wasn't lost on me. The idea came during a particularly brutal physical therapy session. My therapist, working on the scar tissue around my ribs, mentioned how slowly trauma wounds healed compared to surgical incisions. If only we could tell the body how to repair itself properly, she mused. That night, sleepless from pain, I began sketching molecular structures on napkins, combining my emergency medicine experience with the biotechnology research I'd abandoned for more practical pursuits. MedRestore Technologies was born in my one-bedroom apartment at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. The name was deliberately bland, forgettable, invisible, the corporate equivalent of my family position. I incorporated in Delaware under a subsidiary structure, listing myself as Dr. Catherine Ross, using my middle name and my mother's maiden name. Not hiding exactly, but selectively visible. The technology itself was elegant in its simplicity, a topical gel that accelerated wound healing by mimicking the body's natural regeneration signals. Every formula I developed carried the echo of my own injuries. The compound that reduced scarring, inspired by the 16 stitches that created a map across my temple. The neural repair factors, born from the weeks my concussion stole from my memory. I worked 18-hour days, fueled by instant ramen and the peculiar energy that comes from having nothing left to lose. My apartment became a makeshift lab, centrifuge on the kitchen counter, microscope where a dining table should be, chemical compounds organized in what used to be a bedroom closet. I hired freelance researchers through encrypted platforms, presenting myself as a mysterious biotech investor rather than the lead scientist. While I built in shadows, Sarah built her social media empire. Her Instagram became a masterclass in curated perfection. Bride life, cut to the Chen wedding, blessed beyond measure. Every dress fitting, every cake tasting, every nauseating display of false happiness appeared on my feed. I kept my old account active just to monitor, never engaging, a ghost haunting my own former life. Can't believe it's only 6 months until I become Mrs. Chen, she posted, alongside a photo of her left hand, sporting an upgraded engagement ring. The original hadn't been impressive enough, apparently. The new one could be seen from space, a 4-carat cushion cut that mysteriously appeared right after my grandmother's trust fund disappeared. I responded by filing my 3rd patent. The breakthrough came 4 months into development. A veteran with 3rd-degree burns volunteered for our underground trial, desperate after conventional treatments failed. Watching his skin regenerate, not just heal but actually restore to pre-trauma condition, I felt something I hadn't experienced since my grandmother's funeral. Hope that morphed into certainty. Word spread through medical underground networks. Doctors who'd given up on traditional channels began reaching out. By month 6, I had a team of 12 researchers working remotely, none knowing my real identity, all believing in the vision of Dr. Catherine Ross, the reclusive genius who funded everything personally. The delicious twist came when I started investing in Whitman Pharmaceuticals, Sarah's father's company. Small purchases at first, insignificant portions bought through various shell companies. Richard Whitman had built his empire on overpriced medications and cutthroat practices. His stock had been sliding for 2 years, investors nervous about patent expirations and ethical investigations. I studied his company the way Sarah had studied my family, looking for weaknesses, patterns, opportunities to exploit. Every quarterly report revealed new vulnerabilities. Every board meeting transcript showed a CEO too arrogant to adapt. He was old-school pharmaceutical, all profit margins and market manipulation. He'd never see the disruption coming from a company that prioritized healing over wealth. Sarah posted about touring wedding venues. I toured manufacturing facilities. She sampled wedding cakes. I sampled distribution contracts with major hospital systems. She chose between ivory and white. I chose between IPO and acquisition offers. The cosmic joke was beautiful. While she planned a wedding funded by theft, I was quietly buying pieces of her inheritance. Each share of Whitman Pharmaceuticals I accumulated was a brick in the tower I was building, one that would eventually cast a shadow over her entire world. My team grew. Dr. James Martinez, a brilliant biochemist blacklisted by Big Pharma for refusing to inflate his research results. Dr. Lin Wei, whose innovations in molecular biology had been stolen by her previous employer. Dr. Amara Okafor, who'd watched her mother die from treatable wounds in an underfunded hospital. We were the discarded, the overlooked, the ones the system had failed, and we were building something that would redefine the system itself. Dr. Ross, James said during one late-night video call, with these results, we could go public tomorrow. Why are we waiting? Because, I replied, my face carefully angled to hide my scar. Timing in medicine, like in all things, is everything. What I didn't tell him was that I'd synchronized our launch timeline with Sarah's wedding. Every milestone we hit aligned with her countdown posts. She registered for China patterns. I registered our final patents. She sent save the dates. I sent partnership proposals to every major hospital in the country. The universe provided its own poetry. Our breakthrough with neural tissue regeneration came the same week Sarah posted about her bachelorette party, while she celebrated with champagne and male strippers in Vegas. I was in a sterile lab watching paralyzed mice regain movement. Her Instagram stories showed tequila shots and penis straws. My lab notes showed the first successful reversal of traumatic nerve damage in mammals. Rebecca, Sarah's maid of honor, started texting me around this time. Small messages at first, thinking of you and hope you're healing well. Then came the questions. Is it true what Sarah says about the money? And why won't David talk about what happened to you? I didn't respond immediately. Trust, once shattered, requires more than good intentions to rebuild. But Rebecca persisted, and eventually she revealed why. She'd been keeping her own records. Years of small observations that suddenly formed a pattern. Sarah's spending habits that didn't match her supposed trust fund. Comments about my grandmother's donation to their future. The way she'd practiced her surprised face before David proposed. I found something, Rebecca texted one night. In Sarah's old laptop from before she met David, can we meet? We met at a 24-hour diner, the kind where anonymity came free with burnt coffee. Rebecca looked haunted as she pushed a flash drive across the table. She's done this before, she whispered. 2 other families, 2 other fortunes. She just got better at it each time. The files were meticulous, a predator's playbook. Sarah had worksheets analyzing family dynamics, financial assessments, strategic timelines for integration and extraction. My family had been her masterwork, her previous attempts mere rehearsals. She'd learned from each failure, refined her approach, perfected her performance. Why show me this? I asked. Because she's planning something for the wedding. I heard her on the phone with her father about finalizing the insurance adjustment and making sure the sister problem is permanently resolved. Rebecca's hands shook. I think she's going to try to hurt you again, or worse. I studied my former roommate, this woman who'd stood by while I was erased but couldn't stomach murder. "What do you want me to do with this?" "I don't know. Something, anything. Just be careful. And maybe—" She hesitated, then pulled out her phone. "Maybe make sure people know the truth before it's too late." That night, I made 2 decisions. First, I would attend the wedding, not as the forgotten sister, but as the CEO my scars had created. Second, I would ensure that truth, like my company, would launch at exactly the right moment. I scheduled MedRestore's public announcement for the day after the wedding. Win or lose, live or die, the world would know what we'd built from the ashes of what tried to burn us. Sarah continued posting countdown updates. 90 days until I marry my soulmate, she chirped beneath a photo of her trying on veils. Each veil looked like a shroud to me, fitting for someone who specialized in killing families from the inside. 90 days. I smiled at my computer screen, surrounded by patent approvals and acquisition offers. 90 days until everyone learned that the spare daughter, the forgotten sister, the woman pushed down marble stairs, had engineered something Sarah never saw coming. A future where I didn't need my family's validation because I'd built my own empire. And empires, unlike families, recognize their architects. I didn't need to beat my chest. I just needed my results to echo louder than their lies. The Riverside Club gleamed like a jewelry box, every surface reflecting Sarah's vision of perfection. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across tables dressed in silk and peonies. 300 guests mingled with champagne flutes, their laughter a symphony of privilege and pretense. I stood at the entrance, invitation in one hand, the other adjusting the Hermes scarf that had become my signature, not to hide scars anymore, but to remind myself they existed. Name? The hostess smiled with professional warmth. Dr. Catherine Chen, I'm the groom's sister. Her expression flickered, confusion, consultation of her list, forced recovery. "Oh, yes, of course. You're at table 17. 17. Not the family table, not even the extended family table. I was seated with David's college acquaintances and +1s who'd forgotten their partners' names. Sarah's final insult, delivered with surgical precision. Actually, Rebecca appeared at my elbow, radiant in her maid of honor dress. There's been a change. Catherine's at the head table, bride's request. The hostess looked relieved to defer to the maid of honor. As we walked through the crowd, Rebecca's hand trembled against my arm. "Everything's set," she whispered. "The AV team has the files. They think it's part of the official slideshow." And Sarah? 3 champagnes in and telling everyone how she personally selected every detail to honor both families. Rebecca's laugh was brittle. "She actually told your mother that your empty chair at rehearsal dinner was symbolic of healing spaces. We'd coordinated like surgeons preparing for a complex operation. Rebecca had spent weeks collecting evidence, using her proximity to Sarah to document what I couldn't. Phone recordings made during wine-drunk confessions, screenshots of messages Sarah thought were deleted, the security footage from my building that IT mysteriously recovered after a generous consultation fee. "Ladies and gentlemen," the DJ's voice boomed, "please take your seats for dinner service." I found my place at the head table, strategically positioned where every guest could see me. Sarah's eyes widened when she noticed, her smile tightening like a suture pulled too tight. "Catherine," she cooed, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. I'm so glad you could make it. I know how busy you've been with recovery. Wouldn't miss it, I replied, matching her volume. After all, family is everything. David sat beside her, avoiding my gaze with the dedication of a man who'd mortgaged his conscience. He looked older, stress etched in lines around his eyes, the golden boy tarnished by the weight of his choices. My mother leaned across the table. Darling, that scarf is lovely. Hermes. A gift to myself, I said, after the accident. The word hung in the air like a scalpel waiting to cut. Sarah's hand tightened on her champagne flute. Dinner progressed with orchestrated perfection, 7 courses of culinary artistry that tasted like ash in my mouth. I watched Sarah perform. The loving bride, the gracious hostess, the woman who'd successfully murdered one version of me without realizing she'd catalyzed another. Between the entree and dessert, I noticed something beautiful. The investors I'd invited were here. Marcus Chen, no relation, from Sequoia Capital. Dr. Patricia Williams from Johns Hopkins. Even Richard Steinberg, the pharmaceutical industry's most feared corporate raider. They'd come as family friends, their real purpose known only to me. Such a beautiful wedding, Patricia murmured as she passed my chair. Though I'm more interested in the announcement tomorrow. 11 a.m. sharp, yes? I nodded. MedRestore's launch would coincide with Sarah's first morning as Mrs. Chen. While she woke up in honeymoon luxury, the medical world would wake up to a revolution bearing my hidden name. Ladies and gentlemen, the DJ announced, the maid of honor has prepared a special presentation for our beautiful couple. Rebecca stood, microphone trembling in her hand. The lights dimmed and the projection screen descended like judgment from above. Sarah and David's love story is unique, she began, her voice gaining strength. So I thought we should share it properly, from the beginning. The first slides were innocent. Photos from their early dates, sweet messages, typical romance. The guest smiled, Sarah preened, David looked marginally less miserable. Then Rebecca clicked to the next slide. Every love story has challenges, she continued, but true love means honesty, complete honesty. The screen flickered. Suddenly, we were watching grainy security footage dated 3 months ago. A familiar stairwell, 2 figures in conversation. The audio was faint but clear. That money was mine, my grandmother's gift to me. Yours, please. Do you know what David told me about that money? The guests shifted uncomfortably. Sarah's face drained of color as she watched herself on screen, her voice dripping contempt as she detailed my worthlessness. David's hands clenched on the tablecloth as his fiancée's words revealed truths he'd refused to hear. Then came the push, not aggressive enough to look intentional to those wanting to doubt, but clear enough for those willing to see. My body tumbling down marble steps, Sarah standing at the top, watching without moving to help. The room held its breath. 300 people witnessed what David had chosen to deny. But Rebecca wasn't finished. Of course, she said, her voice steady now. Everyone makes mistakes, but patterns tell us who people really are. The next slide, financial documents, transfers from my grandmother's trust, signatures, dates, amounts. Then came Sarah's bachelorette party confession, wine-slurred but unmistakable. Can you believe that pathetic mouse actually thought she could expose me? One push down the stairs and David believed everything. Men are so fucking easy when you cry. Just like with Marcus Henley. And that Patterson boy before him. Though I've gotten much better at picking families. The Chens were perfect, so ready to throw away the spare daughter. The audio continued, Sarah detailing her strategies, laughing about my brother's gullibility, planning how to ensure I never became a problem again. The investors I'd invited took notes. Richard Steinberg was already typing on his phone, likely calling an emergency board meeting about his potential new son-in-law. "Turn it off!" Sarah's scream shattered the horrified silence. She lunged for the projection equipment, designer heels catching in her train. "This is fake, deep fakes. She's trying to ruin everything because she's jealous." But the damage was done. The screen now showed documents from Rebecca's flash drive, Sarah's previous victims, her practice runs before perfecting her technique on my family. 2 families bankrupted, 1 son who'd committed suicide after losing everything, all connected by the same beautiful parasite in a white dress. David sat frozen, his world reconstructing itself in real time. He looked at me across the table and for the first time in months actually saw me. Not the bitter sister or the jealous sibling, but the woman with scars on her temple and evidence on the screen. "Is this real?" His voice cracked like a teenager's. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The truth was speaking for itself, louder than any accusation I could have made. Sarah spun toward him, tears streaming with practiced perfection. "Baby, she's orchestrated all of this. She's always been unstable, you know that. The accident made her delusional." "The accident you caused?" My mother's voice cut through Sarah's performance. She stood slowly, every inch the federal judge's wife, ice replacing the warmth she'd always reserved for David. "The accident that put my daughter in the hospital while you convinced my son to abandon her?" The room erupted. Guests pulled out phones, recording the society scandal of the year. Sarah's parents rushed toward the head table, her father's face purple with rage, not at his daughter's crimes, but at their exposure. Through the chaos, I remained seated, silent, watching the architecture of lies collapse with the same clinical detachment I used in the ER. Rebecca caught my eye and nodded, one soldier to another, mission complete. "You destroyed everything," Sarah shrieked, mascara running in rivers down her cheeks. "This was my day, my perfect day." "No," I said quietly, standing with deliberate grace. "This was the day you showed everyone who you really are." I just provided the screen. Security moved in, hired by the venue, not the wedding party. Someone had called the police. Richard Steinberg was definitely on his 3rd phone call. The Whitman pharmaceutical empire would be in hostile takeover territory by market open Monday. As chaos swirled around us, I walked to my brother. He looked up at me with eyes that finally held recognition instead of dismissal. "Kathy," he whispered, using my childhood nickname for the first time in years. I didn't know." "Yes," I said simply, "you did. You just chose not to see it." I left him with that truth, walking through the wreckage of the reception toward the exit. Behind me, Sarah's screams crescendoed, her mask not just slipping, but shattering completely. The police were taking statements, lawyers were being called. The wedding that was supposed to be her triumph had become her very public destruction. At the door, I turned back once. The head table looked like a crime scene, overturned chairs, spilled champagne, the bride in handcuffs while the groom sat in stunned silence. Our mother stood amid the ruins, finally looking at where I'd been all along. The valet brought my car, a new Tesla, subtle but expensive, nothing like the used Honda I'd driven before my fall. As I slid behind the wheel, my phone buzzed with messages from my team. The presentation had been watched not just by wedding guests, but by their social media followers. MedRestore was trending before we'd even launched. Tomorrow, while Sarah made bail, I would stand before the medical community and introduce technology that would save lives and heal wounds. The forgotten daughter would be forgotten no more, not because my family finally saw me, but because the world would. I didn't need to say a word. The truth has its own voice, and when it speaks, even wedding halls become courtrooms. The valet had barely closed my car door when my phone erupted with notifications. Journalists, medical colleagues, investors. The video had already escaped the confines of the Riverside Club, spreading through social media like an elegant virus. I silenced it all. This moment wasn't about their reactions. It was about my release. I drove back to the reception venue, but not for the reasons anyone would expect. While police cars multiplied in the main lot and guests scattered like startled birds, I parked in the service entrance. There was something I needed to do before I left this life behind entirely. The kitchen staff barely noticed me as I slipped through. Chaos has a way of making everyone invisible. I found what I was looking for in the bridal suite, my grandmother's pearl necklace, the one Sarah had borrowed for her something old. She'd taken it from my jewelry box during that friendly visit, back when I still believed in family. I lifted it from the vanity, running my fingers across pearls that had touched 3 generations of Chen women's throats. My grandmother wore these to her own wedding, to my mother's wedding, to every moment that mattered. They were supposed to be mine on my wedding day, if that day ever came. I knew you'd come back. David stood in the doorway, his bow tie undone, looking like a man who'd aged a decade in an hour. Behind him, the corridor echoed with distant shouting, the percussion of a life imploding. "Just retrieving what's mine," I said, fastening the pearls around my neck. They lay perfectly against the Hermes scarf, past and present reconciling. Catherine, I need to explain." "No." The word came out gentle but final. "You need to live with your choices. I need to live beyond them." He stepped closer, and I saw tears, actual tears, not the manufactured kind Sarah had perfected. She showed me the restraining order paperwork, said you'd attacked her, that she was scared. I thought I was protecting her from you. You thought what was convenient to think. I moved past him toward the door. It's easier to believe your sister is crazy than to admit you chose a predator over family. Wait. His hand caught my arm, gentle, nothing like Sarah's grip. The medical bills, the settlement, let me. I don't need your money, David. I pulled out a business card, the one revealing my real name and new title. I haven't needed anything from this family for months. He read it twice, his face cycling through confusion to recognition to something that might have been pride if it hadn't come too late. MedRestore, that's the company everyone's talking about. The revolutionary healing technology. You built that? I built it with the settlement from your fiancé's attempted murder, actually. Rather poetic, don't you think? Catherine, please, I'm still your brother. No. I turned to face him fully, letting him see the scar Sarah's push had carved into my temple. My brother believed I was worthless enough to discard. My brother chose a con artist over blood. My brother texted me to stay away while I was learning to walk again. That person isn't someone I can call family. I'll make it right. I'll testify about the money, about everything. I don't need you to make anything right. That's what you still don't understand. I gestured toward the window, overlooking the ruined reception. This isn't about revenge or justice or even truth anymore. It's about the fact that I survived without you, thrived without you, built an empire while you built a lie. The sound of Sarah's voice carried up from below, shrill, desperate, still proclaiming innocence despite video evidence. David flinched at each word, his fairy tale finally revealed as a horror story. "She's pregnant," he said quietly. "Found out this morning. She was going to announce it during the toast." The information hung between us like a final test. The old Catherine might have felt something: sympathy, concern, the instinct to fix and heal that had defined my life. But that woman had died on marble stairs. The one who remained felt only mild curiosity, like a doctor noting symptoms of someone else's disease. "Then you have bigger problems than losing a sister," I said, moving toward the door. "Good luck, David. You'll need it." "That's it? You're just walking away?" I paused at the threshold, considering. "Do you remember what you said when I told you I got into Johns Hopkins? You were playing video games and you didn't even pause. Just said, 'Cool, can you grab me a Coke from the kitchen?'" His face crumpled. He remembered. "I've been walking away since then," I continued. "Today I'm just making it official." I left him standing in the bridal suite, surrounded by the detritus of a wedding that would never be completed. The pearls clicked softly against my collarbone as I walked. A rhythm like closing statements, final diagnoses, last words. The parking lot was chaos. News vans arriving, guests giving statements, Sarah's father screaming at lawyers on 3 different phones. I navigated through it all like smoke, insubstantial and untouchable. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "They arrested her. Fraud charges for now. Assault pending investigation. Are you okay?" I didn't respond. There would be time for debriefs and depositions later. Now I had somewhere to be. The storage unit was across town, climate-controlled and secure. I'd rented it months ago, filling it slowly with pieces of a life I was building in secret. Boxes of memories worth keeping. Photos of my grandmother, my medical school diplomas, the few birthday cards that had ever meant anything. Everything else from my old life had been donated or destroyed. I opened box after box, not to reminisce, but to verify. Yes, I'd saved what mattered. No, I hadn't left anything important in the burning building of my past. The final box contained my scrubs from the night of the assault, still blood-stained, still carrying the echo of who I used to be. I should have thrown them away. Instead, I'd kept them as evidence of transformation. You can't appreciate sunrise without remembering the darkness. My new apartment was 40 miles away, in a city where no one knew me as David's sister or the forgotten daughter. The movers had finished yesterday, furniture selected for my taste alone, art that spoke to my experiences, a home office where Dr. Catherine Ross, CEO, would continue building an empire. I arrived as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of healing, purple to pink to gold. The doorman nodded respectfully, knowing me only as the doctor who'd bought the penthouse. No family history, no painful connections, just forward momentum. Inside, boxes waited to be unpacked, a new life to be assembled. On the kitchen counter sat a bottle of champagne, a gift from my CFO, celebrating our successful soft launch. Tomorrow's official announcement would change everything, but tonight was for quiet victory. I poured a glass and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking a city where I was no one's sister, no one's disappointment, no one's forgotten anything. My reflection stared back, scarred but not broken, alone but not lonely, wealthy beyond what my family could imagine, but rich in ways they'd never understand. My phone rang, David's number, then my mother's, then unknown numbers that were probably reporters or lawyers or other vultures drawn to scandal. I let them all go to voicemail, then blocked each one with surgical precision. Cut away the infection, cauterize the wound, heal clean. The last text I'd ever read from them came from my mother. How could you do this to your brother? Not I'm sorry, not I didn't know, not are you okay? Just another accusation, another moment of choosing him over me. Even with video evidence of assault, documented fraud, and a room full of witnesses, I was still the problem to be solved rather than the daughter to be saved. I raised my champagne glass to the window, toasting the woman in the reflection who'd saved herself. Tomorrow, MedRestore would announce partnerships with 6 major hospital systems. Our technology would begin healing wounds that seemed impossible to repair. My company would save lives while my family salvaged their reputation. But tonight, I stood in an apartment they'd never see, wearing pearls they'd never know I'd taken back, building a life they'd never be part of. The forgotten daughter had forgotten them in return, not with malice or bitterness, but with the clean finality of a surgeon's cut. Forgetting, I realized, was just another word for freedom. I didn't need them to know I won. I just needed them to know they lost me. And sometimes the greatest victory is in how silently you close the door. 6 months later, I stood before an audience of 3,000 at the International Medical Innovation Summit. The scar on my temple caught the stage lights. I'd stopped hiding it weeks ago. It had become part of my story, the punctuation mark between who I was forced to be and who I chose to become. Trauma, I told the rapt audience, is not just physical. It's the body keeping score of every betrayal, every abandonment, every moment we're told we don't matter. But what if we could heal not just the wounds we see, but the cellular memory of being wounded? The screen behind me showed MedRestore's latest trials. Burn victims whose skin regenerated without scarring. Accident survivors whose neural pathways rebuilt themselves. Children whose bodies learned to trust healing again. Each success story was a redemption song, though only I knew the personal symphony they created. My phone sat silent in my pocket. It had been that way for months, the numbers that once defined my identity, now blocked and irrelevant. I'd hired a lawyer to handle any necessary family communication. The reports were brief. David's marriage annulled before it began. Sarah convicted of fraud, serving 3 years minimum. The Whitman pharmaceutical empire absorbed by competitors. My parents suddenly interested in their daughter's success, trying every avenue to reconnect. But you can't rebuild bridges from ashes, and I'd stopped being an architect of impossible things. Dr. Ross, a young woman, approached after my keynote, clutching a medical journal featuring my research. I wanted to thank you. Your scholarship program, it saved my life. I was ready to drop out after my family cut me off for choosing medicine over marriage. Your foundation gave me hope when I had none. Her name was Priya, and her story echoed in frequencies I recognized. The forgotten daughter, the discarded dream, the woman who dared to matter despite being told she didn't. I'd started the scholarship program with my first profits, specifically for women betrayed by the families meant to protect them. We save ourselves, I told her, signing her journal. Then we save others. That's how healing becomes hereditary. That evening, in my Seattle office, I'd moved twice more, each time further from the ghosts. I video called my team. We'd grown to 87 employees, each one chosen for their brilliance and their scars. The forgotten ones, the underestimated, the ones who'd been pushed downstairs, metaphorical and literal. The Tokyo expansion is approved, James announced, grinning from his lab in Singapore. They're calling our neural regeneration technology miraculous. Miraculous. I touched my temple, thinking of the miracle of surviving when someone wants you erased, the miracle of building beauty from brutality, the miracle of forgetting how to need approval from people who never knew how to give it. There's something else, Lynn added from her screen. A documentary filmmaker contacted us. They want to tell the MedRestore story, how a mysterious company appeared from nowhere to revolutionize trauma treatment. Should I decline? No, I said after a pause. But tell them the story isn't about the founder. It's about the founding principle that healing happens when we stop waiting for apologies and start creating solutions. Later that night, I walked through Pike Place Market, anonymous in the Seattle drizzle. My reflection in store windows showed a woman I was still learning to recognize, confident, scarred, whole. A vendor called out, offering flowers, and I bought sunflowers because they turn toward light regardless of the darkness they grow through. My apartment had evolved from empty elegance to lived-in warmth. Art from traveling employees, photographs from medical missions, thank you letters from patients wallpapering my office. I'd even adopted a cat, a scraggly thing with a missing eye who'd been deemed unadoptable. We understood each other, the cat and I. Some creatures are only unadoptable to those who can't see past surface damage. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, forwarded by my lawyer. My mother's handwriting, still perfect despite her 70 years. Catherine, I dream about you, not the you that exists now. I don't know her. I dream about the little girl who used to arrange her stuffed animals in order of who needed the most love. You always put the broken ones first. I see now that we broke you and expected you to fix yourself quietly. I'm sorry, not for your brother. I know that's what you expect. I'm sorry for every time I looked through you instead of at you. Every achievement I diminished. Every cry for recognition I ignored. I'm sorry for choosing comfort over truth, for letting Sarah hurt you because admitting David chose wrong meant admitting we raised him wrong. I don't ask for forgiveness. I ask only that you know. I see you now. Too late, but completely. I read it 3 times before feeding it to my shredder. Not from anger. Anger had expired months ago, replaced by something cleaner. I shredded it because apologies from ghosts can't resurrect the girl who arranged stuffed animals by damage level. That girl had evolved into a woman who arranged human lives by healing potential. The irony wasn't lost on me. My mother finally saw me, only after I'd learned to thrive unseen. My family finally valued me, only after I'd built value without them. They wanted the successful daughter, the CEO, the revolutionary. But those titles were born from the forgotten girl they'd helped create through neglect. A text from Rebecca interrupted my thoughts. We'd stayed in touch, the unlikely friendship forged in betrayal and broadcast at a wedding. Saw your TED Talk, you looked happy, real happy, not the kind we used to fake. I am, I replied. And it was true. Happiness had crept in like morning light, slow and then sudden. Not the explosive joy I'd once craved from family validation, but the steady warmth of self-creation. My work saved lives. My story inspired others. My success required no one's permission. The forgotten daughter had become unforgettable on her own terms. That night, I stood on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker like synapses firing, each light a life, a story, a potential healing. Somewhere in those lights were other forgotten daughters, other pushed-down souls, other people told they didn't matter by those who should have treasured them most. My phone buzzed with an alert. MedRestore's stock had hit a new high. We were now valued at more than Whitman Pharmaceuticals ever was. The poetry of it made me smile, not the bitter smile of revenge, but the quiet satisfaction of promises kept to yourself. I thought about David sometimes, not with longing or anger, just clinical curiosity. Did he ever connect the dots between pushing me away and my rise? Did he understand that his betrayal had been my beginning? Or was he, like our parents, trying to rewrite history to make himself the hero of a story where he'd chosen to be the villain? It didn't matter. My success wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about proving myself right to trust my worth when they couldn't see it, right to build when they tried to bury, right to heal when they preferred me broken. The rain started, gentle Seattle drops that cleaned everything they touched. I stayed outside, letting it wash over me, thinking about the woman who'd stood in another rain 3 years ago. Blood on her scrubs and her brother's rejection in her phone. That woman had wanted to die. This woman had too much to live for. My grandmother used to say, "The best revenge is a life well lived." She was wrong. The best revenge is realizing you don't need revenge at all. You just need the courage to become who you were meant to be, with or without the people who should have loved you most. Success is the echo of every time they said you didn't matter. Let it reverberate. Let it build. Let it become so loud that one day you can't even hear the voices that tried to silence you. Because dignity isn't just the gift you keep. It's the gift that keeps giving long after everyone else has run out of things to take. Betrayal taught me to build. Abandonment taught me to soar. And forgetting them, that taught me to remember myself. Did this story resonate with you? If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or betrayed by those who should have protected you, remember, your scars are just the first draft of your success story. Follow Refined Revenge for more stories of elegant vindication, where the best revenge isn't served cold, it's served with class, intelligence, and the quiet satisfaction of rising above. Because sometimes the most powerful response to those who try to break you is becoming unbreakable. Subscribe now and discover that the most refined revenge is a life they can't touch and a success they'll never see coming.